What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show. Now, I apologize for not posting last week. I took the week off for Holy Week. As we all know, last Sunday was Easter, and He is risen, everyone. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, and He has blessed everything and everyone in this world with another day. And obviously, we're in the month of April now. Honestly, this entire year is moving so quick. It does not feel like it's April already, especially not with that, not with the weather we've been getting in Ohio recently. That groundhog was full of shit, to say the least. Spring my ass. All this cold weather, the rain, even snow for a little bit. It's just ridiculous. It's not too late to leave Ohio, everyone. It's not too late to pick up everything and just move. And if you all want to move to Florida, if anybody wants to move to Florida with me, just hit me up. We'll see if we can make something happen. Florida, Texas, honestly, anywhere south at this point, I'm all ears because this weather is just absolutely insane to me. I can't keep doing it. Anyone who lives in Ohio, we all know we get all 4 seasons in a week. Isn't it a glorious time? So it is what it is. That groundhog's still pissing me off, but, we should be getting better days ahead when it comes to the weather at least, so hopefully the weather changes real soon because I'm just over this cold weather. I'm over it. I'm done with it. I'm ready for spring. I'm ready for summer. I'm ready to drive my car with the windows down for once and just blast my music, but right now, unfortunately, can't do that. So, a couple more weeks, we should be good to go. And as you all know, Bucked Up ambassador, so head on over to buckedup.com, get yourself some pre-workouts, some t-shirts, any article of clothing you want, and anything that you may need, from proteins to pre-workouts to lifting gear, anything like that. Use promo code SHOW32, get yourself 20% off. And we have a interesting episode today. So obviously, I'm leaning back into the mental health side of things when it comes to my channel, at least for this week's episode. But before we transition into that, I want to talk about something that's been bugging me a little bit, and it has to do with the movie industry. So recently, this past weekend, Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire, released to theaters, and it had an absolutely amazing box office. The movie had a budget of around $130 million, I believe, and I believe it also made around $195 million in the opening box office weekend. So by far the biggest launch of 2024, easily. And here's what bothers me about this entire thing. Now, I haven't seen the movie yet, so don't be worried about any spoilers. I haven't seen it, but I am looking forward to go and see it, as the Monsterverse is one of my favorite movie franchises. It's right up there with Marvel, Star Wars, anything of that nature. The Monsterverse is definitely one of my favorite cinematic universes to immerse myself into, and those movies I really enjoy all the time. But here's the thing that bothers me, and I'm taking a shot at all the movie critics out there. Nothing against you as people. You're all great people. But I don't give two shits about your comments on movies, if I'm being honest. The problem with movie critics is the fact that they go into these movies expecting good plot, good character development, well rehearsed and, honest dialogue between characters. I'm sorry, if you go into these movies expecting, all those great aspects that human on human interaction is like when it comes to some of the greatest films ever, yeah, guess what? You're going to be very disappointed. Who honestly goes to these movies and expects a good plot, good story development, good character arcs and all that? Nobody. If you look at all the Rotten Tomatoes scores on all of the Monsterverse movies, it's actually kind of hysterical as to what the critics think compared to what the audience thinks. So let's start off with the movie that kicked it all off back in 2014, the original Godzilla movie. So on this one, 76% Rotten Tomatoes score. That's from the critics, and then the audience gave it a 66% rating. Now, I think that's largely in part to there was barely any Godzilla in this movie, and the Muto. There was barely any of that in this movie. I think total screen time, obviously, the movie was around, I think it was 2 hours, around 2 hours long. I think Godzilla was only on screen for about 15 to 20 minutes max, and that included the final fight between Godzilla and the two Mutos. So obviously, I think the critics are going to give this one a higher rating just because it had to deal more with the people in the movie than Godzilla, which was the title of the damn movie. So that was my biggest issue with it when I watched it back in 2014. That the fact is that there was just barely any Godzilla. There was barely any of that action that we crave, honestly, from movies such as that. So obviously, it makes sense that the Rotten Tomato score from the critics is higher up than the audience, because as the audience members, such as us and all of you, we go to those movies to see monsters mess shit up. And we got barely any of that in the original Godzilla movie back in 2014. But now as you transition through the years, movie after movie, you notice that the critic score goes down, but the audience score is going up. So the next movie after that Godzilla movie was obviously Kong, and that didn't do too great. I wasn't a big fan of it either. Mainly the whole movie in general. It wasn't really my favorite. I still enjoyed it. All the fight scenes between the skull crawlers and Kong, those were all fantastic parts of that entire movie. But we're going to move on to, we're basically sticking strictly with the Godzilla films. So the next movie after Godzilla 2014, you have Godzilla King of the Monsters, which released in 2019. The Rotten Tomato score for that from the critics was 42%, and the audience, 83%. So you're starting to notice a trend here, just because it's less human-focused and more monster-focused. Obviously, we had Godzilla, we had King Ghidorah, we had Rodan, we had Mothra, we had, good quality monsters from the entire Godzilla universe, duking it out in the end. That was one of the most high adrenaline rushes of in a movie that I've ever seen, that I've ever personally gotten. Godzilla King of Monsters was honestly a fantastic film in my opinion, but these movie critics, of course, are going into it, taking it for what it is when it comes to the characters and character arcs and development and story and plot and everything. We don't go to any of these movies to see that. I went to that movie specifically to see Godzilla against King Ghidorah. Godzilla against probably the toughest kaiju in the entire Godzilla universe. So, like I said, from Godzilla 2014, where it had a 76% rating from the critics, we jumped to King of Monsters in 2019, drops all the way to 42% from movie critics. So now we're going to jump into Godzilla vs. Kong, which released in 2021. And the critics, 76% rating. Not terrible, honestly. That's not bad whatsoever. It's roughly around the same as the original Godzilla movie. Exactly the same, actually. My bad. But the audience rating, 91%. And I know why that is because we got non-stop action from Godzilla and Kong fighting each other and just duking it out. There's so many different fight scenes in this movie that the audience just can gravitate towards, especially at the very end when pretty much Godzilla does kill Kong. I assume all of you know that. So no spoilers. This movie came out 3 years ago, so you should know that by now. Yeah, Godzilla basically killed Kong towards the end of this movie before they both end up fighting Mechagodzilla together. And that was one of the most amazing fight scenes I've ever seen in movie history, that's for sure. And I can understand why the audience rated it so high, is because there was just nonstop action from all of those movies. And now you transition to Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire, which came out this past weekend. Obviously, complete hit at the box office, complete shattering its own record, its own budget that it had of $135 million or whatever it was, and making over $190 million at the box office. So obviously, movie critics, here we go. 55% Rotten Tomato score. Yet again, going into the movies thinking, we need to see good character development. We need to see a good plot. We need to see a good story. You don't need to see any of that crap when it comes to this movie. Obviously, you got Godzilla, you got Kong, I've seen only the trailers, so I've avoided all spoilers. So everything I say right now, completely spoiler free, don't worry. But I've seen Godzilla, Kong, you have Scar King, obviously, and then Shimo Godzilla. Those are all known right now. And if this rating of 92% from the audience is any indication, I think we're in for another adrenaline rush, just action-packed monster versus monster fighting the entire time. And that's what these movies should be all about. Honestly, I couldn't tell you like any characters that really stick out. Obviously, you have the actor who plays Dr. Serizawa, who ended up dying in the 2019 film of King of Monsters. But other than him, and then Elizabeth Olsen and the other guy who played Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and Age of Ultron in the Marvel universe, those are the only two other characters that I can really, pinpoint with, just think about characters in general. I don't pay attention to those movies for the characters. I pay attention to see monsters absolutely wreck shit. That's it. So that's my whole little rant on that. I can't stand movie critics, and when it comes to these movies, I'm very critical of movies. If I'm not interested, I can probably give an honest, good review about a movie. But the problem with a bunch of movie critics going into these specific movies is that they're looking through the lens of character development and story rather than just taking it for the action-packed adventure that it really is supposed to be. So Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire, out now. I can't wait to go see it. Excuse me. I personally can't wait to go see it. I'm sure I'm going to love it like I loved all the Monsterverse movies, and I look forward to just seeing what's in store for the future for this franchise because, honestly, it's just a big W for any of the Monsterverse fans out there. Like, this is a huge win. So much money made. I think they're just going to continue to ride this wave into the future with movie after movie after movie. They're doing a fantastic job, and I can't wait to go watch and see this. So another thing we're going to talk about real quick is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I talked about Marvel and everything going on with Marvel on my buddy Luke Papala. Check his show out. I'll leave the video in the description. I'll leave that link down there so you can check it out, where we both hashed out our own opinions on, what Marvel is doing currently and where Marvel has gone. Personally, I think Marvel completely peaked after Spider-Man No Way Home. I think Marvel completely peaked and just dipped ever since that. Obviously, there was a bunch of movies, before and after that were pretty good. Shang-Chi, that was really good. I enjoyed that one. Thor Love and Thunder was god-awful. I thought it was absolute atrocious garbage. Ant-Man was not bad with, Kang the Conqueror and Johnathan Majors. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But, I just think Marvel has fallen off a cliff really since Endgame. Like I said, the true peak of Marvel was Spider-Man No Way Home. That was all of our childhood in one single movie. Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland. All Spider-Man. Literally, that was the culmination of our childhood Spider-Man movies. I watched all of them growing up, and it was honestly Hollywood's worst kept secret that those guys, were not going to be in the movie. Like, we obviously knew they had to be in the movie. Time travel was already a possibility, different dimensions, different alternate universes. We knew Tobey Maguire, we knew Andrew Garfield were going to be in those movies. That was Hollywood's worst kept secret. And honestly, it was still a shock when we saw it on screen. But as far as Marvel as a whole, as a company, I think they completely just went into the shitter. I am not really interested in any of the Marvel projects that are going forward just because of the Johnathan Majors issue and everything that happened with him. Now, me and my buddy Luke talked about this where, I raised the question, should they recast Kang the Conqueror or should they just completely write him off and, just move on to someone else? Well, we had mixed opinions on that. He believed that they should recast him. I personally do not think they should recast Kang the Conqueror. I don't think that at all. obviously recastings have happened. They have, and they've worked. We went from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle when it comes to War Machine's character, but here's where I'll go against that. While yes, they've been done, Terrence Howard didn't even put on one of the Iron Man suits. He didn't even necessarily become War Machine. So there was nothing really that the audience can gravitate towards to relate towards, Terrence Howard's Rhodey actually being War Machine. Whereas Don Cheadle in Iron Man 2, he put on the suit for the first time. That's when you saw War Machine really for the first time. So, there was no lasting impact from Terrence Howard's Rhodey. That's it. So honestly, the move made sense just because there was nothing iconic about the character or something unique about the character where you can actually gravitate towards. That's why I didn't mind the Don Cheadle from Terrence Howard move, and Edward Norton to Mark Ruffalo. Honestly, I didn't mind that one either, because the Hulk movie, it was okay. I personally liked it, but it had its own flaws. But Hulk movies never really do that great anyway. So honestly, I think it was still a good move. I enjoy Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. I really did. And I enjoyed Edward Norton's Hulk. So I could go either way with that. So like I'm saying, recastings have happened and they've worked. But the problem with Kang the Conqueror is he's already played such a significant role in the MCU. They've already introduced that he was supposed to be the next big bad, just like the next Thanos level threat. So, and if everybody remembers, Thanos was first introduced at the end of the Avengers movie in 2012. Thanos has been known and grown and developed over nearly a 10-year span. We all knew that Thanos was going to be the end. He was going to be the end game. We knew that he was going to be the final big bad of that entire Marvel franchise, at least up to that point in time. But the problem is that Johnathan Majors, in my opinion, and Kang the Conqueror in general, needed that same growth and development. He already played such a significant role. Even if they wanted to recast Thanos in general back in the day, they could have, because Thanos didn't play necessarily a, significant part. He was just hinted at it in the Avengers movie back in 2012. So going forward, they could have went any direction. They could have switched actors real quick if they wanted to, but the problem with Kang the Conqueror is he's already played a significant role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Johnathan Majors himself already established himself. He looked like Kang the Conqueror, like he had a presence to him on screen. And it's the same way Josh Brolin has a presence on screen when it comes to playing Thanos. He had that presence to himself. He looked like a villain. Johnathan Majors had the same impact, at least in my opinion, when he played Kang the Conqueror in that new Ant-Man movie that came out just a few years ago. So I think personally Marvel should transition, just because you can't really write that off. Like I said, the character has already played such a significant role in the entire Marvel universe. So to simply just recast him, I don't know if that's the right move. At least in my opinion, it wouldn't be, just because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know who Kang the Conqueror is to me? Johnathan Majors. Johnathan Majors is Kang the Conqueror. You could put a name and likeness to the character itself. Like me personally, I don't think you can ever recast an Iron Man. I think you could do variations of it. Like Tom Cruise, I thought he was going to be in the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness movie. I overhyped myself a little bit for that, but do you get what I'm saying? It's just the fact that Thanos and Josh Brolin had significant more build-up and growth over that time period. It was just appearance after appearance after appearance until you see more of a significant role. Obviously, at the end of Age of Ultron, we see him grab the gauntlet. And in Guardians of the Galaxy 1, we see how he has a presence to himself when he asks Ronan to find the Power Stone for him. So, like I said, Josh Brolin has been known and grown and developed over nearly a 10-year span. And in my personal opinion, Kang the Conqueror and Johnathan Majors, they needed that same growth. So it's just a shame that everything happened the way it did. It's a big blow for Marvel. Now, I personally think you transition to Doctor Doom. Obviously, Avengers Secret Wars and Avengers The Kang Dynasty, you can't necessarily keep those names anymore just because of the significance that Kang plays in both of those roles. So if anything, Marvel should transition to Doctor Doom as the next big bad. How you introduce him, I do not know. I personally can't write a movie script, but that's a lot of problems in Marvel. The movie scripts suck. Like I said, Spider-Man No Way Home was peak. That was the peak of Marvel. And then, in my personal opinion, it dipped. And I'm not saying that there were bad movies or series on Disney Plus whatsoever. Falcon and the Winter Soldier wasn't that bad. WandaVision was pretty good. Loki was fantastic. But it's just a bunch of other things that it's just let down. The Eternals, man, that was garbage. Interesting, characters, I will say that, but horrible writing. And the Black Widow movie, it wasn't terrible, but the writing is just off. It's not us criticizing any of those lead roles. It's just the fact that the writing has to be, it just has to be better. Plain and simple. Writing has to be better in Marvel, and honestly, that's where Marvel should go from here, is moving towards Doctor Doom. Again, how you do that, I'm not entirely sure. But as a Marvel fan, I have personally fallen off a cliff, just like the franchises in a way, just because none of it poses any interest for me. Endgame, nothing will ever reach the hype of Endgame just because that was 10 years in the making. Not only was Thanos known and grown for, a long-ass time, but it all started with Iron Man, and every single movie connected with each other in a way. All of them did. Everybody knew that the end game was going to be Thanos after a certain point, but everything, the culmination of all of those movies and build-up, that's what made Marvel so great. It's like the hype train was so immaculately massive that we all knew it was going to come to an end, and they had to go out with a bang when it came to Avengers Endgame, and it hit. One of the top two grossing movies at the box office in history. So, honestly, that's the predicament Marvel's in. I don't know necessarily if they can ever capture what they captured starting back in 2008 with the original Iron Man, going to 2019 for Avengers Endgame. I don't know if Marvel can ever recapture what they captured over that entire decade. So those are my two little rants. Obviously, the Monsterverse, very big on that, and I'm very big on Marvel. And it's just a shame to see Marvel go down such a road where it's basically irrelevant in my personal eyes. I mean, a lot of people still love it. No judgment to them or anything like that. And the Monsterverse, way up. We win when it comes to the Monsterverse. So can't wait to go see that. And hopefully Marvel rights the ship in a way to finally, get back on course. So now let's transition into something else that obviously I ranted a little bit about this, and I might make 2 episodes for it. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode than we're accustomed to, but there's a lot of things that happen in this world that we just aren't prepared for. And when it comes to things that we value in our lives, there's a lot of things that go into everything, every aspect of life that we live. If you want to be successful, obviously discipline and consistency, those are 2 constants for really anything in life. No matter what situation you're in this entire world, it always requires discipline and consistency. It doesn't matter if you're in a relationship. It doesn't matter if you're striving to be success, whatever success is in your eyes. Everything requires discipline and consistency. And everything going on in the world, I see this a lot on, social media and everything, and I've been one to bash social media for a long, long time, even though I'm a hypocrite in a way, just because this is what I do for, my spare time, and I enjoy making these videos every single week, and, I enjoy helping people, but that requires me being on social media. So one thing we're going to talk about today is I've identified, a lot of people in our generation, Gen Z I'm referring to, and even younger or a little bit older, I think all these principles apply to any and all relationships. It could be romantical, it could be, honestly, any kind of relationship. But this is mainly talking about like romance, love, actual relationships that you want to have with a significant other. So I have identified 7 key things that you really need in order to have a successful relationship. And it's going to sound cliche, but all of this is just the truth, at least in my opinion. And I feel like a lot of people are going to agree with everything I have to say. So number 1 is communication. No matter what is going on in your life, I don't care how busy you are. I don't care what you got planned. Communication is always key. If you have issues with someone, let's say 2 people are having issues and they just don't know how to solve it. Well, have you talked about anything? Have you sat and legitimately talked about anything? Well, no. Well, there's one of your first problems. You're not talking. That's one of the biggest problems in any and all relationships. And that can be friendships. That can be just boss to employee. That can be like owner to employees, like anything revolving around a relationship or anything in life. When it comes to work, anything, communication is key. So honestly, if you are having issues with someone in your life and you're just going to hold it in and bottle it in, well, you're just going to drive yourself insane. I've talked about mental health a long time on this channel, and I realized after a while, the more you build stuff up, the more you wait to get stuff off your chest, the more likely you're going to just fall into a black hole of just emotions where you probably won't be able to dig yourself out of. Communication is key. I don't care who it's with. It could be with your significant other. It can be with your therapist, your doctor. It doesn't matter. Talking about your issues, actually talking about the issues itself. Okay, analyze it. Sit down with that significant other and that person and discuss every single thing that you feel is wrong. In a respectful manner, of course. There's no need to be gaslighting. Honestly, gaslighting is just the most ridiculous thing. It's something so simple that a lot of people do. They gaslight. They love the reaction out of, anger or something like that. I personally hate it, and I'll never try to gaslight, ever, just because I don't think it's worth it whatsoever. But when it comes to relationships, talk about your issues. Talk about everything. Anything and everything that's on your mind that you may feel will hold back any relationship, especially romantic ones. That's when you sit down with that said person and just completely get it off your chest. You deal with it step by step by step until you guys can both move on. And communication goes both ways. If one person's putting in all that effort, the other one, it's a balance act. You both have to reciprocate. That's really any relationship. Whatever's going on, you should reciprocate it if you're willing to, be with said person. All that stuff should be reciprocated. But communication is so key when it comes to any and all relationships. Talk about it. Issues, communicate about them. What's your plans? Communicate. Simple texting, calling, communication constantly. That's really one of the biggest keys to any relationship. And that'll hold true forever, in my opinion. So let's move on to number 2. Trust. Trust is hard to gain, easy to break. Trust is one of the most important things that you can ever have in any relationship. If you don't trust said person, guess what? You have no business being with any of them. Anybody. If you cannot trust someone with everything that has happened to you in your life, everything you're currently going through in your life, anything at all that bothers you, respectfully, that relationship won't last. Now, I'm just speaking from an outsider's perspective. This is just, I know what has worked for me and I know what has not worked. I know things that were lacking in past relationships and I know things that worked in past relationships. So this is all just personal experience to me, but if you don't trust that individual, then you're not really going to last forever. You're not going to last at all. And that goes both ways. If you trust your significant other enough, as a guy, let's say this, as a guy, because you see on social media all the time where people criticize girls for going out and doing this, doing that, guys going out. It goes both ways. The guy could be pissed at the girl for going out all the time. The girl can be pissed at the guy for going out all the time. Both of these are interchangeable. There's no one-way street. Despite what anyone tells you, this goes both ways. So if you can't trust that person to police themselves, like sometimes girls and guys, if you're going out and you're not with your significant other, guess what? You have to police your own shit. You have to police your own, actions. Like if someone comes up and hits on you, you have to police your own stuff. You have to be the one who, hey, got so-and-so, I appreciate that, but no. Like you have to be very upfront about that. If you can't trust that person to police their own shit, then guess what? That relationship is never going to last. Trust goes a long way. It's very easy to break and very hard to regain. So it's important to establish that early on in any relationship at any capacity. Trust is a game changer and it'll always be a game changer. Apologize, guys, because my contact has been giving me issues lately. So trust me, I'm not crying. I mean that. So let's go on to number 3. Respect. Respect goes a long, long way. Whatever it is that someone else is doing in their life or whatever they're going through, just be respectful. Honestly, respect is such a big thing that I feel like people in our generation, in Gen Z, overlook. And it's not even just respect to each other, which obviously you should do no matter what. Anytime, anywhere, it should always be respectful, no matter what. But also there's other things that can be classified under the umbrella of respect. How do they treat others? How do they treat their parents? How do they treat their friends? How do they treat their siblings? How do they treat law enforcement? How do they treat, customer service workers? How do they treat servers or bartenders? Like, how do they treat people in general? If you see someone who's very disrespectful, even in the public eye, like just flat out disrespectful maybe to retail workers or to servers or to bartenders for maybe simple mess ups, which we all mess up in life. So don't think you're perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody will ever be perfect. Only Jesus Christ is perfect. That is just the truth. Nobody on this planet is perfect. But just having some level of respect for each other and what you value most in your life and respect for others. Because odds are how they treat other people is exactly how they'll treat you. So that's something to be mindful about. However they treat others, however they treat their parents, their friends, other extended family, their bosses, their coworkers, even just the people who maybe bartend or serve or just help them out at simple grocery stores or any store or any business anywhere. Respect goes a long way. And honestly, it can flip on a switch like that quick. The second someone is disrespectful, you start looking at someone differently. That's the reality of it. I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but for me, the second I see disrespect, now obviously I have been disrespectful to people. I have been disrespectful to my parents, my God, everyone. I've been disrespectful at some point in my life. Maybe it wasn't, and it really wasn't even intentional. It just happens. But if someone is going to go out of their way to disrespect other people, yeah, that's one of the biggest red flags out there. There's no reason for disrespect. I don't care if someone does screw up. Screw-ups happen. But be respectful about it. Always be respectful, no matter what. Disrespect goes a long way into destroying any relationship, especially romantic ones. Excuse me. So number 4, loyalty. And I think that goes without saying, but from my experience and just watching so much crap happen in Gen Z, the stuff you see on the internet is just ridiculous. Honestly, it makes me sick to even be a part of this generation some days, just because cheating has been normalized by a lot of Gen Z, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. How are you going to completely be that you lose communication, you lose trust, you lose respect. Loyalty is one of the biggest things on this planet that is needed in any relationship. Friends, family, romantic partner, it doesn't matter. Loyalty is a key ingredient into keeping any relationship healthy and strong. The second you are unfaithful to someone, guess what? Out the door. And I've always been a proponent of giving people second chances. I believe it is possible. But at the same time, in my opinion, cheating is just like one of those non-forgivable things in a relationship. It's something that you never forget. It's something that it's very hard to forget something like that. When someone just completely disrespects you in that manner and just goes to something else. Loyalty is a big one. And that's just the reality of Gen Z, is the fact that a lot in this culture, it has been normalized to just go around, cheat, and have no sense of loyalty whatsoever. And I think that's complete garbage. I think that's complete trash. And I think that's completely shameful and very disappointing, especially in this generation. It's just the fact that it has become so normalized. I'm speaking from the perspective of what I see on the internet all the time and just stuff I've heard in my entire life. Loyalty is key. Loyalty is important. Loyalty is up there with one of the most important things on this planet to keep any and all relationships healthy and strong. Don't cheat. I think it's just ridiculous and something that shouldn't even be preached, but, in life, you're going to have to preach it to some people. Boundaries. Number 5. Boundaries. You have to respect said partner's boundaries, no matter whatever that could be. If you don't lay them out ahead of time, that's when you can really, be treading on thin ice. Boundaries should be established right at the beginning of a relationship. Like, this is what you're okay with, this is what you're not okay with. And that goes both ways. It's important for both sides of said relationship to establish that precedent right there. What are the things you're okay with? What are the things that are no-goes for you? Everything. If you're going to live your life one way and they're going to live their life another way, that just hinders the relationship from day one. And that transitions into number 6, which is life priorities. That is a very important one when it comes to relationships at any level. How and what are your life goals? What are your dreams? What are your passions? What do you value most at this current state? So, here's my experience with that. Life priorities, they change over time as you grow, as you mature, everything. That just takes time. But for me, here was my life priority. I'll go back to my senior year of high school. My life priority at that time was do good at baseball, do good at football, try maybe possibly get a scholarship or go to a good college. Okay? So that was my life priority then. I'd say ages 19 to 22 for the most part. Party, party, party. Those are my life priorities. Have fun and party it up. Live it up in college. But I've talked about where my life went when I didn't take my studies seriously. I talked about where my life was when school was not a top priority for me. I almost got kicked out of school. My GPA plummeted into the shit. And I thought I was in deep, which I was, if I didn't get my act together. So life priorities matter. And that stretch of time, that hindered me a lot. And that doesn't even go just for relationships. That can go for anybody, just any day of their lives. What are your priorities in life? What do you value most? What do you want to grow and achieve? For me, My life priority now is obviously I want to find my career. I finally managed to graduate college, like I've said in previous episodes. Like, I'm thankful to God for that I actually got my act right and, put in the time, put in the effort, discipline, consistency, and just finally managed to get my degree when at one point I didn't think I was going to get a good degree at all. But now it's about finding my career and growing in my faith. I have made tremendous strides when it comes to growing in my faith. And this is going to transition right into number 7. The best thing any relationship can have is God-centered. When you start taking your faith serious, and I'm speaking from the Christian standpoint. Now, I am I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I wouldn't say I am a follower of a religion for religion's sake. Obviously, that is Christian. So, yes, I would fall under the Christian umbrella, but I think religion and Jesus Christ are completely two different things. Jesus didn't die to start a religion. He died to save us. That's the reality of it. But the second you start letting God take the wheel of your life, that's where true happiness comes in. If you want to be happy for a day, go out to dinner. If you want to be happy for a week, go on vacation. If you want to be happy for a month, buy a new car or buy a new house or go on a month-long trip to Italy or Greece or Europe. If you want to be happy for a year, move cities. But if you want to be happy over your entire life, allow Jesus Christ into your heart. Allow God to steer you in the right direction. Give God your heart. That's where true happiness comes in. Honestly, and I'm not even saying that just to be cliche. When I started taking my faith seriously, now I asked myself, am I following Jesus Christ for, because the masses are telling me? Or do I genuinely think that, the evidence points to him have been resurrected? And from everything I've read, from everything that I've been reading, yes. John 14:6, he's the way, the truth, the life. And I live by that scripture. I love Jesus because he loves me. He loved me enough to die on a cross for my sins, to prevent me from spending eternity in hell. And that's where the truest form of happiness and love come from, is from God. And I think if you want to have a relationship with someone and you want to grow it into something amazing, I think it should be God-centered, Christ-centered. Because some people explained it to me this way. When you have different priorities in your life, and this goes back a little bit to number 6, what are your priorities in life? Well, say one said person, another said person, one man, one woman are both chasing God. They're both chasing to make God and Jesus Christ a bigger part of their life. Suddenly, it all meets at the top. Christ at the top. 1, 2. Meets to the very top. And I think that's the most beautiful thing ever, because some people explained it to me this way. When it's a lot harder to maintain a relationship when one person is running towards God and the other is running away from God. And now I firmly believe that because of certain circumstances and situations I've been put in before, even fairly recently. You think about those things. And when you start having convictions about certain things, that's how you know God is working in your life, because your priorities change. Your desires change. All of that stuff changes when you start to give Christ your heart and when you start to try and follow Christ. So let's say two people were together and one was running towards God and one was running away towards God. A lot of people would say, oh, I love that person and everything. Well, the truest form of love is through God. And one of my favorite passages that talks about love in 1 Corinthians 13. I keep my Bible everywhere where I go. So the way of love. And it talks like this, and I'm starting from verse 3. So 1 Corinthians 13:3. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide. These three. But the greatest of these is love. Love never fails. And God has also talked about before that if it wasn't true love, it would never fail. Because love never fails. And I believe the truest form of love comes from God. And I think the absolute best relationship in this entire world, and I'm not saying that others can't work at all, but the best form of relationship is when the two individuals have Christ at the center of their world. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I am 5 subscribers away from 100. We've done some significant growth over the past couple months, and I couldn't be more grateful and blessed for all of you. And I really appreciate you making me a part of your day. I'm your host, Dominic Lako. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better